oh, I can never have a cupcake. Well, maybe you shouldn't be having that cupcake. I mean, have you ever thought about the side effects of that cupcake? Like, what'd you feel like the next day? I mean, I don't think people even think about it because they're just so used to it. They're just so used to, like, I ate this cupcake, it was so good. They have no idea what the next day felt like because all they care about is they had that cupcake. I mean, they're not putting it together, I guess, and they don't want to. So many people do not want to. They don't want to talk about it. They got blinders up. They don't care. I feel like poo, but I get my cupcakes. Okay, guess what? That's your journey. But please don't be mad at me because that's not my journey anymore. Please don't be mad at me because I show up at festivities with 5 pounds of bacon.
Amanda, how did you find carnivore?
It's a very long story, Dave. I would say, I mean, the best way for me to explain it is I was very sick. I was bedbound and I had gone through a year of what I consider Western medicine. So, what my doctors here had told me to do, and ended up worse by the end of the year than any better. And so, carnivore, I just looked up what are people doing. So I'll tell my story, but how I found it was what are people doing for idiopathic intracranial hypertension? What's out there? What are people doing besides what I'm doing with my neurologist? And I found Ribeye Rach. And Ribeye Rach had a lot of neurological deficits, and one of them being idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And she was starting to cook her own meals. And if anyone has ever had their independence or function taken away from them, cooking your own meal sounded amazing to me. I couldn't wait. Even though she said, I'm cooking it, but I have to sit on a stool. I don't care. If that means I can cook my own meal, let's do that. But the reason I got there, the reason I was to the point where I had to use YouTube to try to help me figure out my own health was a decade, almost exactly 10 years, 9.5 years of abdominal distress. I had been diagnosed with gastroparesis, gastritis, IBS, IBD. I had sludge in my gallbladder. Finally, in 2020, I was diagnosed with SIBO, however everyone pronounces it a little different, but small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And that led me to keto because the doctors that I were following at the time and the naturopathic doctor that I was seeing said that I needed to just eliminate sugar, that glucose fed the bad bacteria, which just made me continue to have exacerbations of nausea, vomiting, diarrhea every day. And so that started me on the keto. But then at the end of 2020, I would say that did help a little bit of my gastrointestinal distress. But at the end of 2020, well, November 15th of 2020, I started having visual disturbance. And what I mean by that is nothing was solid. Like everything, all edges were moving. Everything around me was a constant state of movement. And I couldn't focus on anything. That night, I went to bed. I didn't feel good. I kind of had a headache. And I woke up with a migraine. And I had migraines pretty much my whole life. This was a very different type of migraine, I would say. The pain was directly in the back of my head, just along the back. So if you know anything about migraines, they're usually unilateral, one side or the other. This was right in the back, and it felt like someone had a vice grip, just squeezing it as hard as they could. And I was going blind. So I woke up and I couldn't see anything. And I thought, oh, it must be really dark in here. And then I kind of tapped my husband and he was like, nope, the regular, kind of lights are on. And I was like, I can't see anything. I can't see anything. So they turned on the light and I couldn't see that the light was on. So of course we're panicking slightly in the fact that I can't see. But then I got extremely nauseated and I went into the bathroom and my vision came back. But what happened was it started strobe lighting. Like I was in a weird, just like black and white strobes throughout my vision. And then it would be like a bright pink rectangular would shoot through my vision, or a triangle that was bright red, or just all these really what I call laser light show. That's what it felt like, was just like, oh my God, I'm at a Pink Floyd laser light show right now in my vision. Like, I don't know what's happening. And, but the pain was horrific. And then I had what's called dumping syndrome, where all of the sudden everything just flushed right out of me. Just had to go right there. My heart rate dropped to 40. I felt like I was going to pass out. It felt like after the vice grip grabbing, it felt like an ice pick just stabbed me in the back of my head. And I was screaming. I mean, it was, not only was it terrifying, but I've broken a lot of bones, been in a lot of accidents, and not just car, but uh, other accidents. And it was nothing like, I mean, a broken bone, I would have taken 10 times over that pain. I just never felt anything like that. And at that point, my husband and I had decided I should go to the emergency room. But it only lasted like 5 minutes. And now we know that's considered a thunderclap headache. So something that is just super extreme and severe pain. I couldn't talk. I was having stuttering speech really bad. I couldn't put sentences together. I couldn't really think through, like attenuate a problem. I couldn't do it. And but I didn't have health insurance. So I didn't really want to go to the doctor because that's very expensive to go and get MRIs and neurology. And so I ended up the next day, my husband called my optometrist because I had visual insurance, and he was like, come in, we'll see what we can do. So I came in, and I couldn't drive because I was going blind and I was seeing all these weird things. So I couldn't drive by myself, and I had to wear black out dark glasses because every light, movement, noise would make my head, I was so hypersensitive. It just made everything so much more intense. But I went, and he dilated my eyes. It was awful. The pain was awful. It's not, the dilation part wasn't awful, but just how much sensory input goes through the eye was pretty overwhelming. But within, minutes, he was like, you have brain swelling. You need to go to the emergency room. And what he saw at that time, when he looked in my eyes, were my nerves, my optic nerves, what they consider grainy. He said that they're just not clear. The edges should be clear, and it wasn't. And he was like, you have to go. You have to go now. And so, but in order to see a neurologist, you have to have a like reason, kind of like an MRI or some reason that they figured that I needed to. So that's exactly what the neurology department said. Oh, you can come here, but he won't see you for what you're coming here unless you have an MRI. So I went and got an MRI. I wasn't going to be able to see him for a couple of months anyway. So it wasn't, I wasn't considered urgent. And so I went and got an MRI at the beginning of December. And when I got that back, I looked at it. I'm a healthcare professional. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I can read images, and I looked at it and was like, okay, so there's definitely some lines that were not what I had normally been seeing in a normal brain MRI. Went to the neurologist in the end of February, and he did all these eye tests. I went to a neuro-ophthalmologist, and he did these eye tests, and he's like, you have right optic nerve damage. There's a black spot on it. And I said, yeah, that makes sense to me. And then he said, but we don't know what's causing that. I was like, okay. He's like, well, idiopathic intracranial hypertension will cause that, but you definitely don't have that. I was like, are you sure? Oh yeah, no, your MRI would show that. You would definitely have it. It'd be right here showing, and you definitely don't have that. It's like, okay, well then what would cause what they consider papilledema? And he was like, well, I don't know. That is the cause. So I had it, but now I don't have it, but the damage is there. So I got confused. And of course, remind you, I couldn't attenuate a situation. So for me, I was probably confused from the beginning. Luckily, my husband is also in the medical field and was like, that doesn't make any sense. How do you know? Started asking questions. Well, what it came down to, in my opinion, is that I was an overweight type A woman. The neurologist didn't look at me the entire time I was there. He only talked to my husband. He didn't listen to anything that I said, because he kept saying, well, stress has done this to you. You need to manage your stress. 2020 was a very stressful year. And I don't deny that, Dave. I do not deny that 2020 was very stressful for a lot of people. My husband and I own our own company. We definitely felt the effects of COVID in 2020. I completely get that. At the same time, because we do own our own business and we can only get so many patients to come, we actually had a pretty good 2020 in the fact that we were able to go camping a few more times than we would normally go. We were able to do more things. And so for me, I felt like my stress was pretty managed if he was going to blame it on 2020 or blame it on COVID. I felt like that was a little bit of a cop out, in my opinion. And so he said, here are some pills. You need to start with taking 3 of these 3 times a day. And then we're going to give you these other pills. So he gave me, by the time I left there, he gave me 3 different medications. But it was 3, 6, 9, 13 pills a day after one session. Then he said, I'll see you in 3 months. And I said, but I'm going blind. Like, I can't work. Like, I can't even have headphones in and listen to a book in the dark. Like, I can't have any stimulation without horrific side effects. Well, there's nothing I can do for you. It'll just go away. You need to lose weight. This will go away if you just lose weight. Okay. So I went home. But remember, like, everything overstimulated me so bad that I would vomit or have diarrhea, dumping syndrome. I was so sick. How am I supposed to work out? Like, how am I supposed to lose weight when I could barely move? And so, but I was like, okay, if that's what he says I need to do, then let's figure this out. Let's figure out how I'm going to make this happen. So my husband started, like, AIP, the autoimmune protocol diet that's supposed to be reducing inflammation, help you with all of these things. So we went down that for a little while. We tried a lot of things. By March, I was on 7 different medications and up to 20. I think it was, at that point, it was like 21 or 22 pills a day. And now that happened because my primary care physician got involved and was like, oh, you need this headache medicine and these injections and you need this and that. And so it just medication. And I'm going to be honest, as somebody who has worked in the medical field for 20 years, okay, they're going to lead me. This is going to work. This is, I'm not going to be on these forever, and this is going to work. September of 2021, it just wasn't working. It wasn't working. I felt worse than I did before. I could get out in these big, huge, dark glasses. I could get outside a little bit for a few minutes before I'd start seeing like red flashing and weird eye symptoms. And pain.
So at this
So
time, you're having to walk around like Jackie O kind of thing.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, all the time. But then they said that that's just going to be my life. Like, this is you. This is you now. And I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I work with people, and I love to touch people and feel and see how things were going. I like communicating with people. I love helping people. And they were telling me I wasn't going to do any of that. Like, that I was just going to be locked in a room. Like, I wasn't going to be functional. And a little bit of history, I was a river guide for 10 years. I was a snowboard instructor. I've just done so many fun things, for them to say that, sorry about that. There's nothing we can do for you. So that is when, actually, in September, when he's like, oh, you need to start swimming. Oh, okay. But I listened. Again, Dave, I totally listened. I went out and bought myself an above ground pool. My husband set it all up, got it all ready for me to go. It took me 45 minutes just to be able to go outside and try to get into the pool. Took me another, I would say 45 minutes to an hour to just sit there and try to move my arms without vomiting over the side of the pool. And when I say vomiting, a lot of times I couldn't eat. So it would be, just dry. I mean, just horrible, just you can't control any of the symptoms that were coming on. But I tried. I tried so hard. I was like, okay, the cold's going to do it, right? It just needs to be the cold. And he was like, no, you have to move. And so at that point, all of September, I tried so hard. And it made me worse. It wasn't getting me anywhere. I just felt like I'm not getting anywhere. So that's when we started going down the YouTube hole. That's when we started looking like, okay, what do they do? Oh, I completely missed a part, Dave. During this time, I was trying to advocate for myself because the neurologist wasn't helping me. And a colleague of mine had reached out and said, you need to talk to a doctor at Johns Hopkins. She works at Johns Hopkins in the neurology patient advocate center. And she said, you need to talk to this person. And so he said, you need to get an MRA, which is an MRI for your arteries. And you need to get a CTV, which is for your veins. And he's like, I want it of your brain and I want to then see it. So luckily, my neurologist wouldn't order it. But luckily, my primary care doctor was like, oh, yeah, I'll order that. So we got those done. And actually, the doctor at Johns Hopkins is the one that diagnosed me with idiopathic intracranial hypertension and then got me the lumbar puncture for the definitive. You have to have a lumbar puncture for a definitive answer if this is what you have. And I finally got that. And that is what I had. That's how I knew to look up what are people doing for this. Because all he could say was, well, we could put a stent in. You want to have brain surgery? No, I don't want to what are you talking about? This came on in like 24 hours. Like, why would you cut on my brain? And so I said, no. I said, if in 6 months I have not found any way and I'm still fully suffering, then we'll talk about it. But I'm not a big cutter. I don't like cutting. I don't like people to be cut. I'm try to avoid it at all costs for as long as you can. My husband wanted me to get it pretty bad. He was like, just get it. It is going to save you. But there was something in me that I was just like, there's got to be something else. There has to be a reason this came on. It can't just be because I'm fat. I've been heavy most of my life. My sister died when I was 17. I started gaining weight pretty significantly after that. And so I feel like if my body was really, it was because I was obese, there should have been other symptoms or other signs or something like for my brain to react this way. So that's when we found Ribeye Rach and then studied carnivore. Just, can you really do carnivore? I loved meat. So I was already like, I can just eat more meat. That's totally fine. But can I really do is carnivore really what's going to save me? Is it really what's going to help me? And so in August, I'd had that lumbar puncture. My next lumbar puncture was scheduled for February. And I was scared to start carnivore. I'd done a lot of other diets in my life and I was looking at it as a diet, not as it was going to be something, that was my lifestyle. And so still in my mind, I was like, how long am I going to have to do this? What am I going to do? Is it going to work? And I was still on 23 medications at that point. At the end of 2021, I was on 23 medications, 11 of one pill. So at the end of the day, I was taking almost 40 pills in one day. So I started carnivore February 5th of 2022. 12 days after February 5th, I had my lumbar puncture and I was normal. My visions, my head swelling, the pressure, it was very intense, all was gone. I'm not saying that every one of my symptoms just miraculously disappeared, but the debilitating part leveled out. And I could come upstairs. I still wore glasses. I still had some visual weird stuff, but I could come upstairs. I could cook my own breakfast. I could dress myself. My husband was dressing me, showering me. He had to do everything before he went to work. We both couldn't just be off work. And so I could go upstairs. And like I said, I still had to monitor myself. I still had ice packs wrapped around my head. I was still overstimulation was still very much a part of my life. But as soon as everything started to change within that first 2 weeks, I knew I would never go back. I knew I would never I would do this. If this is what it meant for me to be functional, this is what it meant for me to be functional. And that was just it. I never even thought at that time about anything else besides what meat and eggs I was going to eat every day. I didn't think about anything else. And that hardcore dedication lasted about 3 months. And then I was like, well, I'm feeling so good now. Maybe I could have some sushi rolls. That was what I was missing. I wanted sushi and sushi rolls, not just hashimi, the sushi or the not cooked meat by itself. And so I went and did that. We bought sushi. We had some sushi. And the next day, I had more visuals. I had more issues. I had more head pressure. I just didn't feel very good. And I was like, well, I shouldn't do that. But still, because I also have some food addiction issues, little sugar addiction issues. I had some mindset issues around not eating sugar for emotional comfort. I had some other things that I needed to work out before I could become, the carnivore that I wanted to be. And so about 6 months in, I decided I have to be a carnivore. Like, I can't be a partial carnivore. It's what I called myself. And so I did. Since now I've been carnivore for 3 years, it's a little bit different because what I thought was a hardcore carnivore, I was eating a lot of dairy. And I thought, oh, I'm doing so good. But dairy was my crutch. Dairy was when I was having emotions, fry up some cheese. When I'm having a difficult day, make some cheese something. And so probably for a year and a half, I relied heavily on dairy products. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still ate my pound to pound and a half of meat and my eggs covered in cheese most of the time. But it was the snacking on dairy. It wasn't the utilize it as a condiment type of thing. It was eating it as a meal. And that didn't help me. That didn't make my carnivore. I mean, my symptoms were consistently decreasing. By the end of 2022, I was off of all of my medications. Anxiety, headache meds, gastrointestinal meds, all of my meds. I weaned myself down completely. I had fired my neurologist by then, so I just figured out like how to do it with my primary care doctor. And I got off all of my medications. Which there are side effects of that too. So it wasn't like it was like, oh, I'm off and woo, this is great. There was like a little bit of tweaking and figuring out what to do with the meds. But overall, I was done with them. I didn't need them. And then I just had to play with my symptoms. So then for the last year and a half, I guess now, I do a lot of biohacking, a lot of trying to figure out N=1, what is best for me. And just to put that all into a big circle for everyone, I haven't lost any weight. From the moment he said, you need to lose weight for this to all go away, carnivore wasn't miraculous in 12 days. I lost 100 pounds and everything was beautiful. No, I'm still to this day figuring out what carnivore is right for me. And I don't do dairy. Every once in a while over the holidays, I sneak it in. But then I remove it again. And I just know now that I don't ever want to go back. And I know that carnivore can help me not go back. Yeah, I just know that I never want to go back. I know that carnivore is what's going to keep me functional. It's what helps my brain work. And I should also say, when I first started, I followed Angela Stanton's migraine epidemic. So I started following Dr. Angela Stanton's book. And she's big on low carb and then also salt. And I started taking in about 8 to 10 grams of salt a day. And that was a game changer for me. So carnivore had already changed a lot of things. Carnivore, reducing all of the processed food and all of the different things that I was doing prior, carnivore helped all of that. But then salt like lit up my brain. It all of a sudden was, just this next step of healing is how I felt about it at the time. I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. And Dr. Huberman had talked about, having some salt water in the morning when you first wake up. So I was doing that salt water in the morning, and I was doing salt in my water all day, every day. I would put salt under my tongue. I would salt my food, and it never tasted, too much salt, ever. It was always just, I just want this. I want this. It was like my body just craved it. That stopped. It started becoming overpowerful. Like, whoo, that's a lot of salt. And I started realizing, like, oh, I need less. I need less. I need less. And then now it's just salt to taste. I don't take electrolytes. I don't put salt in my water. I don't drink salt water in the morning, even though maybe I should. But I feel like my synapses are right. Like everything is working. And so I don't use salt like I did, but I think I really, really needed it at the time. I think my body needed to have that, because if we know anything about the brain, there's sodium channels that you have to have sodium in the brain for things to synapse the right way. And I just maybe was deficient or not getting it appropriately in my really bad diet prior to this. So I use salt a lot as a crutch. And then, like I said, now if I even have a tinge of a headache, which is really rare, I was getting migraines 2 or 3 times a week before. I haven't had a migraine now in over a year. I don't even know if I just had a regular headache, to be honest. But if one even if I even think one might be coming on, I'll put salt under my tongue and it goes right away. I don't have a problem with needing to take anything. I don't take meds. I don't do anything, but I do supplement with, I do drink MCT oil every day. Again, for my brain. I know there's a lot of like ketone processes and things that happen with MCT oil, direct absorption, and all of those things. But I really looked at the brain research for MCT, and I just didn't know, because no one could tell me if I was going to have brain damage. The pain was severe, and they were telling me I could have a stroke at any time. I think that's the thing, after months of laying in bed and being stuck in your own head, when they're telling you could have a stroke at any time. So every night when me and my husband would go to sleep, I would tell him everything I thought that I'd want to tell him if I was going to die. Like I wanted him to know all of my feelings, all of my thoughts, like everything. So every night my poor husband had to sit there and listen to me tell him all of these things, which upset him, right? Because then he's like, why are you doing this? He understood why, but at the same time, it's life-changing. It's altering. It makes you think differently about everyday things. And so neither one of us really sweat the small stuff anymore. We just, it's one of those things that just makes you think about life a little bit differently, and what you do and how you enjoy it or not, or, whatever. Your choice is to live better or choose to, go backwards. It's kind of one of those things. It's just made us feel like this is the direction, this is the path. So he went carnivore too. And it's been fantastic. Both of us being able to do it together. Not only is he super supportive and was supporting me the whole time, but then when we started going and learning, he was like, well, why wouldn't everybody do this? Because he doesn't have any ailments at all, like no comorbidities whatsoever. And so he didn't have to, but he loves it. Everything has changed for him, just in the way that he's just clear upstairs in the brain, and then just better in the gym. He's just really enjoying it. So now I still biohack, I still cold plunge, I still sauna, I still vibe plate. I've added a lot of things to help with my inflammation. I've cut out dairy. And I still just play with it, Dave. I just play with it. I play with it all the time. Because I'm still not where I'd like to be, but I'm really close. Really close.
Right. So you mentioned it's been over a year since you've had a migraine, and no visual disturbances for a long time either?
For about a year. Yeah. Because usually the visual disturbance will come on as the aura. So, but not always. Like before all of this, sometimes I would have an aura and sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I wouldn't know that it was coming on. And then when this happened, because everything around me was moving, I was like a kind of in a constant state of an aura. And when I say now, like when I feel an inkling of something coming on, it's usually like a pain. It's not an aura anymore. Like I don't have that issue as much as I did. If I overdo, which if anybody that knows me watches this is going to giggle, but if I overdo and just have tons of stimulation, lots and lots, and like mental and physical, then I can have a little bit of my brain is telling me like, you need to practice this, not just jump into it. So I've been slowly increasing my visual, what I work with is my vestibular system, to gain it to be stronger, so visual input isn't as negative. It doesn't negatively affect me the same way. So I still work on that a lot. I don't know 100% if I need to, but I guess I'm a little bit nervous not to do it. But yeah, I can drive, I can go to work, I can see people, I can do this. I definitely couldn't have done this at all. No way. I work in a community, so I help people. And so I'm back to probably where I was really. If I think about where I was before all of this, I'm better than I was. Um, but I still feel like I can be better than I am now. Like I still want to lose the weight. I still want to, be the healthiest person I could possibly be. But I just have to figure out what that means for me. Like, why am I this far in? I've done all of these things and my body does not want to get rid of the weight it's holding. And I've worked with 4 or 5 different coaches and talked to multiple different people. I've done 72-hour fast for 8 weeks in a row. I've done alternate day fasting for months at a time. I mean, you could probably throw something out and I'll probably say, yep, I've tried that. I've done egg fasting, sardine fasting. I mean, I follow lots of influencers, listen to a lot of interviews to see what other people have done, and I'll try it. And I'm not one to try it for like 2 days and, oh, that didn't work. I try it. It's months of trying something before I even change. And I try to do one thing at a time. So if I'm going to try the fasting, I don't go fasting, extra salt, vibe plate, cold plunge. No, I'm like, okay, I'm going to change the fasting. Let's see if just changing the fasting helps. If 3 months in, nothing has changed, I'm like, okay, let's go back. Now what should I change and see if that has an impact? And that's how I became cold plunging, sauna, and vibe plate. Those are the 3 things that I've done that have the largest impact on my day to day. I still alternate day fast 2 weeks out of every month, but I don't. I guess that's really it. Those are, and I just eat meat, and a lot of meat, and that's kind of it.
Well, so what does the menu look like during the day, and how many times are you eating?
I usually eat once or twice. Kind of depends on the day. I just go by how I feel. If I'm hungry, I'll eat. If I'm not hungry, I just don't eat until my body says I should eat. And I had to learn those signals too. I didn't have good signaling to eat. And actually, I think it was 8 or 9 months into carnivore, I had my blood drawn and she checked for leptin, ghrelin. So leptin being, you know, are you full, and ghrelin being, are you hungry? And so she checked both of those. My ghrelin was fine, but I was leptin resistant. So I was insulin resistant, no, not diabetes. My A1C was still 5.2, but my insulin was 18, my fasting insulin. And so I had to learn hunger signals. My body had to be able to understand. So that took a while before I knew I could eat a lot. Dave, I could eat 3 pounds of meat in one sitting, like without it. I mean, feeling, oh my God, I ate a lot of meat, but nothing told me to stop eating. And so I was like, oh, they say eat till you're full. Well, keep on eating then. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I ate so much. I feel like, Thanksgiving, but not Thanksgiving because that was just ground beef. Um, But I did that for a while. I felt like I needed to almost like make myself sick off of it until my signals started being like, stop eating. and then that worked. And then that leveled me out. So now I think eggs are, so nutrient dense. I have to have at least 3 every day. And I eat ground beef a lot. I crave it more than any other meat. I'm not sure why. But so like today it is 2:30 my time. I've had 3 eggs and a pound of ground beef today. With my MCT oil and some hot water and then regular water. And then tonight, I'm actually having chicken tonight because I was craving it. I don't eat chicken often, but again, I'll just eat what I feel like I want to eat as a meat product. And I might wrap it in bacon. Kind of just depends on how I'm feeling at the time. But if I'm not hungry, like I'm not hungry now, and if it becomes 4 o'clock and I'm not hungry, I just won't eat because I don't want to eat after 4 p.m. my time. It's because I feel my best if I don't. I sleep better if I haven't eaten a large meal. Even 2 to 3 hours is not enough for me. I have to have at least 4 to 6 hours before bed. Otherwise, I can still feel my meal. I was diagnosed with gastroparesis. So, the slow getting the food all the way down, it has been slow. And sometimes it'll feel like it's stuck here. I don't get that anymore unless I do something goofy where I eat at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Then when I go to lay down, I'm like, oh, that food did not like make its way where it's supposed to. But for the most part, that's it. A few eggs every day, at least a pound of ground beef or a pound of ribeye, or even a pound of chicken. Like I will do that. I have started following Dr. Sean O'Mara, and I have added a few fermented foods to see if that would even help my gut even more. I have fallen in love with kimchi, which I think is just because it has this crazy different taste than what I've been eating. I just eat a little tiny bit, maybe a quarter of a cup with my pound of meat. And I follow his protocol, which is like you have a piece of the ferment with the piece of meat at every bite. And to be honest, I mean, it's been a few months, but I don't know. I don't know if it's made me any better yet. I surely haven't really felt the significant difference, but I'm one in my mind because I know that the 10 years of gut issues, I believe personally, is what caused my brain issues. Yes, I had migraines and things like that, but I feel like my gut dysbiosis was so bad for so long. And now knowing that, the vagus nerve, constant communication between the brain and the gut, and that when the gut has issues, it can go to the brain and cause issues. I feel like my gut is what I need to be focused on now and get it 100% healed. And then that's when I feel like the weight will come off, when my body trusts me, because I've done things to it. It doesn't trust me. And I change my mind every 5 seconds. So it really doesn't know if I'm going to do anything long enough for it to trust me, which I understand. Through the research, I get that that's a part of it, right? Your body's like, oh, here's this wackadoo doing something different this time. And oh, she's going to change it in 5 minutes, which is what I've done for so many years. And so now that I've been carnivore long enough, I just think my gut still needs a little bit more love, just a little bit more. Something has got to give in there for my body to feel protected, for me to just shed the weight and be over with it. And then I think that'll be like the ultimate life changing, to change my entire life. That would be the last thing that carnivore can do for me. Not the last thing that carnivore can do for me. I guess that's not the right way to say that, but it's kind of the last little hump I need to get over, I guess.
And so have you had any reaction from friends and family about this?
Yeah, negative and positive, Dave. Negative and positive. So at first, it was hard for anyone to be mad at me. I mean, I have vegan friends. I live in Oregon, and they are big on being vegan. I never was a vegan. I couldn't do it. I tried for like 3 days and failed miserably. It was not my thing. It just didn't work out for me. But they were more telling me how much I'm going to kill the planet. I'm not helping the planet and I'm killing the planet. And how dare I, just eat meat. But now, because they've seen, I couldn't hang out with people. I couldn't do anything. People would ask me to go out. I'm like, I can't even leave my bedroom. Well, no, I'm not going anywhere. I can't meet you anywhere. And so then when they started seeing me being able to meet them and being able to go and do things like go to the river and get on inner tubes and float the river, they were just like, you can do that? I'm like, yeah, like I'm getting my life back. I can do all sorts of fun things now. And that is when people really started to be more open to it, maybe, and be understanding. And because my foot was pretty firm, I wasn't about to just change because they said I was doing something, or I'm a pretty stubborn person. And when something works, I'll stick to it until it doesn't. But in this, I felt it. I knew there was something that I needed to do when I started carnivore, and it started immediately changing me. I felt like this is what I needed to do. There wasn't a question about it to me. So when people started being kind of negative Nellies, I wasn't telling them to do it. You don't have to do it. I don't care what you eat. This is about me. And if you want me to be at these functions, then this is what I have to do to be there. And whether you support it or not, this is what I have to do. And over time, now my vegan friends will still bring faux meat to our, get-togethers, and I'm just try to explain to them how ridiculous, but you can't, right? You can't get through to everybody. You're not going to change everybody's mind. You're not going to convince everybody that cows farting or killing the planet. You can't convince anybody anything that they don't want to know, right? And I know for my personal with my friends that are vegans, they don't want to know. They don't want to learn. They don't want to be educated in any way, shape, or form about anything besides that the vegan diet is the way to go. And all of us other people that aren't doing it are killing the planet and killing everybody else. And what in the hell's wrong with us? And so for me, we just don't talk about it. I bring my meat. I eat my meat. Other people eat my meat. And it's fine. It's just not a topic of conversation. My family, I don't know. Family's interesting, isn't it? My family saw me when I was in the hospital and saw that, I was not functional. We don't live in the same town, but they came and they saw that I couldn't talk and that I couldn't see. And when I started healing myself, I thought my parents are going to be so excited and they're going to jump on board with this, and they are going to they need to do it too. My mom is 400 pounds and they need to do this too. This is going to be amazing. No, it's, there's so much, in my opinion, there's so much more to just becoming carnivore. It's some people get to do it and it's awesome. Some people can just choose, like, I'm going to do this and this is what's going to be good. And they can do it. And that is so fantastic. I envy those people. My mom is a sugar addict. She's a carb addict. She has no, mindset to do the hard things, to sacrifice some of the things, because carnivore to me is not easy. It's a choice. It's a choice that I'm choosing to do so I can be here and help people and help myself and, do the best I can in my life for me and others. And so it's not, for me, I still sometimes crave food, even this long in. Sometimes I still have emotions where I'm like, man, something could be so good right now. But I know the effects of it. So it's a fleeting thought. It's not a thought that sticks there and I dwell on it. It's just not like that for me. But for my mom, it is. And she tells me she can't eat meat. And, every excuse under the book on why carnivore will never work for her. And that's okay. Everybody has their journey, their reasons, their life. I don't judge anybody else if they don't want to do carnivore. But I think that the more people know how carnivore can change your life, and it doesn't have to be to where you're never ever going to have kimchi, or you're never going to have sauerkraut, or you're never ever going to have, heavy cream again, or whatever it is that people are, oh, I can never have a cupcake. well, maybe you shouldn't be having that cupcake. I mean, have you ever thought about the side effects of that cupcake? Like, what'd you feel like the next day? I mean, I don't think people even think about it because they're just so used to it. They're just so used to, like, I ate this cupcake, it was so good. They have no idea what the next day felt like because all they care about is they had that cupcake. I mean, they're not putting it together, I guess, and they don't want to. So many people do not want to. They don't want to talk about it. They got blinders up. They don't care. I feel like poo, but I get my cupcakes. Okay, guess what? That's your journey. But please don't be mad at me because that's not my journey anymore. Please don't be mad at me because I show up at festivities with 5 pounds of bacon or rack of ribs. Like, this is where I'm at. And normally people love bacon and ribs. So it's just the people that are really, set in their ways, don't want to learn, and they don't want to change. And again, to each their own. I don't pressure anybody, whatever they want to do.
So, Amanda, how can people reach out to you? You do some coaching?
I do. Yeah. So I do private coaching. We own a company called Life Force Physical Therapy. And my email address is just Amanda at lifeforcephysicaltherapy.com. We also have a website. It's called lifeforcephysicaltherapy.co. And it's got all of my health coaching information under the health coaching section. And then I also coach in a community called Beyond the Bite. And today, actually, we had a Q&A, just people asking different questions about different topics. I'm certified in lymphedema, wound care, and vestibular rehab. So we do talk a lot about those things. But I also am certified carnivore and fasting coach and primal health coach through Primal Health Institute. So I just help people basically with every aspect of their health journey. So even if they're not 100% carnivore, we just talk about, other aspects, sleep, sun, all those things. And on Instagram, I am Amanda Force, FORCE 21. And so they can reach me in any of those places.
Awesome. I'll link to all those in the show notes. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.